Hello everybody, it's Angelic Cipher with another episode of CV's Deciphered. Today we are taking our first dive into a in-depth look at one of the aircraft carriers in game. We're starting with the USS Langley. Langley's a pretty cool ship. She is historic. She was built as a collier at the USS Jupiter in 1912. But the US Navy decided, hey, these airplane things are kind of cool, so what do we do? And they converted her to an aircraft carrier, the USS Langley, in 1920. She was the US's first aircraft carrier. It really was designed as a test bed for aircraft carrier operations, trying to figure out how to make this new technology work and what they could do with it, how to make it more operationally efficient, etc. She was the only CV that we had until the Lexington and Saratoga were commissioned in 1927. So for a period of 7 years, she was it. Ultimately, it was decided that she was too small and too slow for fleet carrier operations, which she was laughingly called a fleet carrier when she was first made. And she did have 3 bigger sisters with 4 more on the way when they decided, you know what, we're going to convert her to a seaplane tender in 1937. And she served in that capacity as AV-3 during World War II. Ultimately, she was sunk in February of 42 while transporting a whole bunch of P-40s to Java. In World War ships, she was part of the initial launch of the game in September of 2015. So she was part of the Midway line back then in the RTS carrier lines. And there were only 2 carrier lines in the game at that time, which were the Hakuryu and Midway. So she was part of that initial wave. She's always been a Tier 4 carrier, even in the RTS days. During the rework in January of 2019, they removed all the RTS, and she retained being a Tier 4 and still the entry point for the Midway line. For modules, I want to dive a little bit into these. So modules, she gets her typical Tier 4 where she has all of her planes fully upgraded out of the gate. The only upgrade for her is to go from hull A to hull B, which is nice. It gives you a little bit of a chance to not have to worry about bottom tier planes, which a Tier 4 bottom tier planes would be like Tier 3. So, whatever. No Tier 3 planes for us. Upgrades, she has standard slot 1 and slot 2 and everything that's available to slot 1 and slot 2 for the aircraft carriers. So that's pretty standard fare. And you can take a look at some of the upgrade consumables that you can see, or upgrade slots that you can see in some of my earlier videos describing what each one of those do. Consumables, she's got the standard fare for all carriers where you could do the auto or manual damage control party and then auto or manual interceptors. These are pretty, again, standard fare, and I do have videos about those if you really get curious. Now I'm going to jump to an in-game and show you a little bit about some of the things about her hull. Alright, so first and foremost, she is the slowest ship in the game at a maximum of 15 knots. I currently got a speed flag on, so you're going to see it go a little bit more, but she's still the slowest speed ship in the game. That said, she's not horribly maneuverable, but she's not great at it either. Her AA range is going to be 3.5 clicks, which means she has no flak at all. So you're pretty much relying on her interceptors. The other thing that I want to kind of point out here is her concealment is going to be 9.8 for surface ships, so out here. And at Tier 4, that's pretty wide. Air or periscope depth, you don't have to worry about subs, but air range is going to be 5.9. Her secondaries, by default, are 3.5. I've got them at 3.7 because of the flag. If you go manual, you get them up to 7 by stock. They a little bit further out with the flag on. So that should show you a little bit about what the hull itself can do. Now we get to talk about attack planes. For her attack planes, she is running the F-3F Gulf Hawks, which Gulf Hawks actually saw real service from 1936 to 43. They were pulled from frontline service by the end of 41, so before anything really got rolling, they were basically yanked and primarily used as things like trainers for fighters and whatnot until they were ultimately retired in 43. If you take a look at the actual aircraft themselves, the Gulf Hawks, so you can see the attacking size of the flight is 3 aircraft, you get a total of 6 in a squadron. What that translates to is you get 2 total attacks maximum in each squadron that goes out. Hangar, you've got basically 9 aircraft on deck, so once you launch your initial 6, you got 3 more in reserve. Restoration time is 1 plane every 47 seconds at stock. Speed is 161 max, cruising speed is 121. Damage reduction, she doesn't get any. So any of the HE rockets in the game, when they start their attack run, don't have any damage reduction. The hit points for the plane stock is 1,210 per plane. So I want to talk a little bit about the rockets themselves. Rockets and payload. So you get a total of 4, but there's 3 planes per attacking flight. So it's a maximum of 12 rockets that you could get if you get a lucky enough dispersion. Then again, they are high explosive, so you're not going to be really getting citadels unless blind luck on these. The armor penetration on these is 27 millimeters, and you got a fire chance of 7%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're throwing 12 rockets, you're probably going to get a fire. It's pretty likely. 27 millimeters of pen's good enough to pen most everything at tier. So you're going to have a hard time with some of the other things like some of the battleship components and whatnot. I'll show you that here in just a second. So we're going to jump into game now and go through a little bit of what the rockets can do. Being tier 4, you have only the one consumable of the engine cooling, and that's going to be true across the board. So what I want you to notice though is where the reticle sits. This is pretty much designed where you want to attack broadside on things. And again, 27 millimeters of pen is nothing to sneeze at tier 4. So we could definitely slap some stuff around. You do need a little bit of lead on these guys. So, especially against a faster ship. Show you what I mean. Right about there. Try to have it intersect the ship right in the middle. 4 pens, 3 non-pens, and a fire. So, gives you a little bit of an idea of how that attack can work. So one other thing I wanted to mention about the rockets is the rockets themselves are going to be good to hit pretty much everything. Maybe not as good against battleships, especially the lower tiers where you have so many batteries for the main turrets in the middle. You're going to break a lot on those. But one thing that they are very good at is going in with a single strike and hitting a carrier. So they're very useful that way. If you are finding yourself in a carrier v carrier battle, the rockets on these do tend to chip away really well, and if you pre-drop a squadron, you can definitely get that carrier hurting pretty quickly. Just to kind of show you a little bit of what I mean, you can see I've already pre-dropped this, and I want to try and hit on the hull, not his armored deck, especially since these are Hermes. And 7 pens. So, free damage. Show you what I mean with attacking things like battleships with all the different guns on them and whatnot. When it comes to rockets and their penetration. Almost half of what I shot at him broke. But 2 fires. So, it's not horrible damage. And he's going to burn, and those are going to be permafire, so it works for me. Like I was talking about with the aircraft carrier, you can see I've already pre-dropped this squadron. So I'm going to go in with just the one. Which means this fighter's not going to really be able to latch in time. And I get away scot-free. Next, I want to talk about the Torpedo Bombers. The Torpedo Bombers are made by Martin, and they are T4Ms. The T4Ms were actually operational planes as well, from August of 1928 until 1938, so they had a 10-year service history, and they were actually the last biplane torpedo bombers the U.S. Navy used, ultimately getting replaced pre-war by the TBD Devastators. When we're talking about the attacking flight, you get a total of 2 planes per attack, a total of 6 in the squadron, so a maximum of 3 attacks if you're lucky. You have a total of 9 on deck, so once you launch the initial attacking flight, you're going to have 3 left in the hangar. And it's going to start rebuilding those with the aircraft preparation. You get one new plane every 59 seconds. Total max speed's going to be 123 knots. Hit points, you got 1,550 per plane at the stock. And they have the standard torpedo damage reduction during an attack, which is 50%. The torpedo themselves, you get one torpedo per plane, so a total of 2 per attack. The speed of the torpedoes is 35 knots. Arming distance is pretty decently close at 282 meters. And flood chance, which you don't see on this, is going to be 30%. So it's a pretty standard flood chance. So we're going to take you into game and show you a little bit about how the torpedoes work and how they react now. Torpedoes, again, you only have the engine cooling. And being torpedoes, you of course want to attack broadside. I don't know if a single set of torpedoes in the game you don't want to attack broadside with from a CV. They cone in decently fast, not amazingly, but they're also slower. So I want to drop them a fair dip ahead. And that should be 2 torpedoes on him. So they do decent, consistent damage. You'll typically lose 1 to 2 planes in an attack run, so it allows you to potentially get 2 strikes. Torpedoes, if you can line them up right, you can hit anything with them. That's one of the nice things about them. Although sometimes hitting things as nimble as destroyers can be a bear, especially with faster ships. Because of how slow these torps are, you really do need to give it some good lead. Like that. And now we're going to talk about the final squadron, the dive bombers. The dive bombers are actually made by Vought. They're the SBU Corsairs, not to be confused with the F4U Corsairs that everybody's familiar with. Vought reused the name several times. So these are the standard dive bomber from 1935 till 1941 that the US Navy used. They were ultimately replaced by the SPD Dauntless. But they still saw limited service in 1941, but they were pretty much all pulled before the war really got started. As far as your attacking flights in game, you have 2 planes per attack. You have a total of 6 planes in the squadron, so you get a maximum, if you're lucky, of 3 attacks. You have a total of 9 airplanes on deck. So when you launch your initial flight, you'll have 3 more left in the hangar. You get 1 new plane every 55 seconds for these guys. The max speed is going to be 134 knots. Max hit points is going to be 1630. And these are, again, all default numbers. I haven't done anything to modify any of this as of yet. The damage reduction for dive bombers, they have the standard damage reduction of 30%. Now let's talk about the bombs. The bombs are actually really good in the game. You get 1 bomb per plane, okay? So it's a total of 2 bombs that you can potentially drop. The bombs themselves are high explosive. They're arguably some of the best HE bombs in the game across the entire midway line at tier. So they have an armor penetration of 42 millimeters, which is nothing to sneeze at, especially at tier 4. And fire chance, 41%. So you have a very high likelihood you're going to get a fire with these. So let's go ahead and jump in-game now and show you a little bit about what these look like. The bombers are one of your more devastating weapons that you have in your arsenal. They are typically not very good against more nimble targets. You typically want to attack from behind and use the curling capability to actually hit things wherever possible, but they are usually going to be best on battleships. For things that are more nimble, wait till you're pretty much at the bottom of your drop to actually drop them to eliminate as much dispersion as possible. And down at the bottom of the drop. And I still get 1. My absolute favorite target for dive bombers with the Langley is going to be battleships, because it's the easiest to actually land more than 1 bomb on. The hard part about it is you have all these turrets that could potentially get in your way. as you can see with the one non-pen. There we go. That's a better hit. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think you get a good idea of how the planes handle and what the Langley is really capable of. You can utilize most of the ordnance on pretty much just about anything that you can go after at Tier 4. The good news is you don't have to worry about submarines, so you don't have to worry about ASW or any of that stuff. Just get used to how the planes work against the different targets. It's a good, solid jack of all trades, master of none carrier at Tier 4. A great CV to learn on when you're first starting out. Anyway, my name is Angelic Cipher. I hope this helps you guys out. And this is CV's Decipher.